Nice.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for
Hello.
waiting for a couple of minutes. We've been having some technical difficulties, but that
Oh,
keeps us on our toes, doesn't it, Alyssa, right?
it does indeed.
It's exciting. So thank you for joining us tonight. Alyssa and I have been planning on doing this stream for quite some time, and we've been long overdue for a collaboration. So we figured that
Mhm.
it would be really fun to have a good conversation about empowering women in Godzilla films because, frankly, I think more conversations about this topic are needed in general because there are some really awesome women throughout the
Oh, yeah.
Godzilla franchise, right?
Right.
So obviously, before we get started, Alyssa, how have you been doing? What have you been up to? Feel free to share, make plugs, all of that jazz.
Well, thank you for asking. I've been pretty good and getting ready to move to Japan for my 3-year sea tour. Thank you, Navy. Um, so that's coming up in about 2 months now. I'm going to take leave, have some fun with my family, and then go out on my adventure. Also, in the meantime, I have my book coming out in August. So I I got my editor's feedback and I it didn't crush my world. It actually made me feel really good. She has so many great things to say, and the edits she made were not anything that I hadn't noticed already. So it kind of confirmed my feelings and suspicions on things. So I feel really good. I've been working on my edits all day, gave my phone a heat stroke, trying to type in the 90-degree weather, and it's been great. So how have you been, Donny?
Oh, I've been doing well. I've also been working on my second book of poems too. So I
Um,
know as we've been, because I actually had the opportunity to read Alyssa's novel, and it's phenomenal, by the way.
thank you.
Um, and so we've been kind of like going through this like book writing process simultaneously, and it's been super fun. Of course, writing a large piece of fiction is much different than writing a large collection of poems. I would argue that writing a piece of fiction is more difficult, but that's because poetry comes more easily to me than fiction writing does. So,
Mhm.
well, unless we count fan fiction, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Um, no pun intended, of course.
Hmm.
Um, but beyond that, I've been doing very well. I've just been spending a lot of time outside, doing a lot of gardening,
Good
just
stuff.
yeah, kind of unwinding from the school year. So it's been really nice. So
Working your
um when do you project your book will be did you say like in August, I think?
Yeah, I don't really have a set date because I'm going through KDP. So I have to edit with my developmental edits. So I have to implement those. My proofreader, Mark Justice, is going through and doing structural, like commas, sentence structure. And he's also formatting my book for me for KDP because he knows how to do it. So that's really nice of him. He's really hooking me up. So once those edits are done, then I have to submit for my proof copy and, get my book and look through it. Does it look good? If it does, then all those weeks later, I can say, go live, here it is, and
Oh my
start
gosh.
selling. So,
So in the spirit of fun, because that's what I love, do you want to give a small synopsis and name the title of your book for everyone to kind of build some excitement a little bit?
oh, Donnie, I would love to. All I talk
Woo!
about is my book. It's like my big thing right now. It has been for the last 5 years. But my book is the one that I've written now is book one in a trilogy called the Merc Maiden Trilogy. That's MYRK. And this trilogy revolves around a young girl. She's 15. She starts out living a pretty humdrum life with her family that hates her pretty much. And she discovers that she's part of a cult of dark magic sorcerers. And as she's living life with this cult, she's watching herself devolve into a monster and she's grappling with existential crises, um, identity issues, everything. She's just watching herself fall apart and thinking, she's torn between, is this the right life for me? Because it feels good, to butcher people and, just let that out. But then it also feels very wrong. It's so kind of goes through that. And books two and three are her finding her way in life. So book one's Daughter Darkness is the name.
Woohoo! Oh my gosh. If like to kind of like add to that, like if you are a person like me who really enjoys fantasy fiction that has like an adventure component to it, but also as like an examination of, like you were mentioning, identity, right? Like
Mm.
it makes for a very neat interwoven combination of variables that really helps the story move forward. So like I love it. Like it's really good.
Okay.
It's definitely worth the wait. And so checking to see who's here in the chat. Maddie is here. It's good to see you. Lagiakris. I hope I pronounced that right. I probably didn't, but you know, I'm always trying. Ari's here. My dear friend Ellen is here. Leo is here and having some delays technologically. I'm sorry, my friend.
Welcome to the
I,
club.
yeah, I know. Welcome to the club. Like we're always having some sort of technological disaster happening.
Yeah.
So long as I don't dump coffee on my computer like I did about a year ago, I'm good because that was the
Was it
first.
during a stream?
No, it was the first week of school on a
Oh.
Monday, right when, well,
Oh.
actually, I was about to do some streams.
Oh.
So I remember I cried. I remember
Oh.
it was a really bad day. But
God.
anyway, I digress. And I'm glad that you're doing better, Lagia, Chris. I'm glad you're doing better. So let's talk about the ladies in the Godzilla franchise, okay? So like looking at the Godzilla franchise as a whole, like I feel like it gets a lot of, I don't know, a lot of people will make criticisms and comments about how a lot of the characters are two-dimensional and not really that innovative. And I'm not gonna lie, like I used to be that person that would make that argument, but going back through and watching the various Godzilla films, I have kind of learned to appreciate a lot of these characters. Because the truth is, when you are writing for films that are about giant monsters who are characters themselves, and trying to weave in human characters, that can be kind of a very foreboding task. And I'm sure that the directors and the writers and the producers have to make certain sacrifices with regard to the human characters in order to make the giant monster characters more entertaining slash appealing. So I've learned to kind of lessen my criticism a little bit, even though I love being critical, but you know, that's besides the point. But I've also kind of developed an appreciation for how many of these characters have developed. So
Right.
my first question for you, Alyssa, kind of to start things off would be like as you've watched the Godzilla, like as you've watched different Godzilla films, like do you feel as though you've developed a stronger appreciation for many of the characters, male, female, monster? Like if so, how?
Yeah, I would say so because as a kid, this was a thing for me as a kid. I like to impress adults by showing them movies that meant a lot to me, like in some philosophical way or something like that. So movies like Terror of Mechagodzilla with Katsora's struggles and her, her struggling with being a cyborg. Like I thought that was so cool. And then against Mechagodzilla, like I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like this is how I impress my family members and try to get them into Godzilla. Like, hey, look, these movies are deep. Me, 7-year-old me. But I would say that the characters who aren't as developed in the movies, like different ones, I have developed greater appreciation for them because I'm older now. I see, and now that I'm looking at the world through an author's lens, I see what the writers and producers were doing with these characters, what these characters are meant to represent, how they're supposed to be, and I appreciate the effort. And I'm more mature now, so I can see their humanity. Um, because people would say like Dr. Serizawa in Gojira, he has very little personality or whatever, or he's just, just all about his science. I would say he's also very human, and he reminds me a lot of myself with his like obsession with his work and how the tie-ins with what do I do with this? What's the morally correct thing to do with my work and my passion and things like that. I think he's actually pretty simple, but complex at the same time. So yeah, I'd say I have because I've seen these nuances. What about you?
Oh, like I'm glad that I agree with you completely. I love that you mentioned Dr. Serizawa from the original Gojira film from 1954, because to me, like as I've grown older, and I think many Godzilla fans can also attest to this, we see the different layers of the Godzilla films, the different complexities, and I think like if we look at that film, Dr. Serizawa like serves as like the prime example of what it means to be human, considering
Mhm.
the whole film is about distinguishing what makes humanity versus what humanity has created in the form of Godzilla, right? And I
Right.
always believed that he kind of embodied this self-sacrifice notion, that's what makes humans human, is our care and our ability to self-sacrifice for others. So
Right.
and the thing is, like, there's frequently a lot of interesting conversation about the male characters, and there's been a lot of criticism against Godzilla films, suggesting that maybe women aren't represented as well. And I originally kind of had a similar criticism a long time ago, but again, I've kind of developed a stronger appreciation for the films that do feature strong women characters, and I know we're going to talk about a few of them tonight.
Right.
So now my next fun question, which I'm really excited to ask you, would be, which empowering woman from the Godzilla franchise has influenced you the most and why?
Oh, that's a great one. And as soon as you were asking the question, best girl Akane Nishiro comes to mind. I love Akane's arc, how she goes from this timid, oh yeah, there she is, I love her.
I finally
Um,
figured out how to use the overlays. Woo!
Yay! I love how she's just, even in that picture, you can tell she's just like, she's stoic and she's reserved. She's an introverted person. Like you could say that. Like
I
she's
love
not,
this.
go
The
ahead.
word stoic really, like, to me, that describes her perfectly. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
You're fine. She's just not about like the pomp and bravado. She's not a grandiose person, you know. She's grounded and realistic. She's introverted, you know. She keeps to herself. She accepts her responsibility for mistakes that aren't entirely in her control, like killing her fellow members, you know. Um, and you get to see her progress through the movie as she is developing into someone who once thought her life meant nothing, but then she finds purpose in defeating Godzilla and she applies herself and says, you know what? I don't want to die, but I also don't want the people I care about and the world that I live in to die at the hands of Godzilla. So she has that flashback with little Sarah holding out her hand and saying, don't die, you can't die, right? And she realizes it's a really interesting contrast how she's reserved to the fact that she very well may die fighting Godzilla, but it's the first time that she realizes she doesn't actually want to die. She's willing to for her purpose of defeating Godzilla, but she thinks on Sarah and she's like, you know, I have something to fight for, to live for. So I'm going to try not to die, but even if I do, you know, I thought that was really cool how she's still holding on to a part of who she is, but at the same time she's broadening her perspective on life by, you know, realizing there's stuff to live for and every life is worth something. So I love her very much.
Me too. Me too. Like we could probably do an entire stream just talking about Akane Yashiro
Yeah.
because I always say this, and I'll say this till the day that I die. The Kiryu saga, which is Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, and then Godzilla Tokyo SOS. Those are two of my favorite
Mm,
um, Godzilla films because, of course, they are connected with one another, and they do have these very dynamic characters. Now,
yeah.
also for me, Akane Yashiro is one of my favorite characters in the entire Godzilla franchise, because in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, it's one of the first Godzilla films to really have some sort of like underlying commentary about trauma and mental
Hmm.
health, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
Because like obviously toward the beginning of the movie, like she goes through this horrible loss, a loss that is partially her fault, right? Because she
Hmm.
like
She can.
froze. Granted, one could, beg the question of like, would she really have been able to do anything? Because this is Godzilla we're talking about.
Mhm.
But like she went through this horrible loss, and I think she was punishing herself for that loss more than other people who were punishing her. So like that's why that commentary about like her own self-worth, her own, I don't know, like her own presence in the world, because there's this, I remember that scene that she has with Sarah where she makes the comment of like I don't belong here anymore,
No
or
friends, no family. Some things never change.
right, like
To memory.
yeah, like, and I remember when I watched that film as an angsty high school teenager, because that's the first time I watched it, I was just like, Akane is me. Like Akane is angsty gothy me, listening to Evanescence and crying, you know, because I feel so misunderstood, because I really do feel like she was misunderstood. And the whole
Yeah.
purpose of that film for me was, again, her finding atonement for herself, but also, like you were mentioning, coming to the realization that there are people who care about her, and those people that she cares about are the ones who motivate her to not
Die
necessarily,
for, live for, and
right,
die for, like both.
right, right. And she ends up like being kind of like this icon, not only this stoic icon, but this icon of like self-sacrifice. Like she sacrifices her well-being from this character who is a bully. What is his name? Hayama, I think that was,
Yeah.
you know, like he was a bully, like very sexist, let's be honest. And like it would just treat her horribly, of course, obviously, because he was very much connected to that loss. I believe it
His
was it,
brother.
yeah, it was his brother who was lost at the beginning of the film. So and like I just think that seeing how much she develops over the course of the film kind of takes all the criticism that anybody has ever had about Godzilla films not developing characters and proves them wrong with this
Right.
one character, right?
Absolutely. I also want to add that um you know how Akane freezes in the beginning of the movie, which leads to people dying?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a show of fear. She panicked. She even said in the movie, I confess, I panicked, and she said that. And then later in the movie, she's putting her life on the line and confronting her fear against the same creature that made her so fearful and caused the deaths of others. It's almost like she's redeeming herself. You know, her fear of Godzilla led to her members' deaths, but now her fear of Godzilla drives her to defeat him and prevent more deaths. So that popped in my head. You know, she's tackling the fear. And I love how she does it in a non-grandiose fashion. You know, she's not over here parading and like, OMG, I'm so cool, you know, and like just slicing down enemies left and right. She's just very grounded and realistic. She's committed to the cause. No,
Mm-hmm.
again, no pomp and circumstance. She's just, let's get this done. If I die, I die. I died for a noble cause, but I also want to live for something. It's just, it's quiet, subtle, and simple, and just well done. I
Right.
love her.
I see. I think you put that perfectly. Ellen mentions that she doesn't think that Hayama is sexist necessarily. I agree. Like, I partially agree. Like, I think it depends on what version of the film you're watching, because in the original Japanese version, there are no like comments that would suggest sexism. But in the dubbed version, I don't know, maybe if it was like a translation issue, but there were a couple of bits of dialogue that I would argue teeter very close to like, well, like a woman shouldn't belong in battle. She should be doing this instead, kind of a scenario.
See, I
So,
got that from Megaguirus when the boy asked, "How come a woman wants to fight Godzilla?" Um,
mhm.
that was funny.
And the truth is that could simply be a dubbing thing too. You know,
Yeah.
maybe in originally the writers didn't intend on placing a focus on sexism. That's very possible, right? Because
Yeah.
the truth is, like, I mean, unless you look at some of the Showa era Godzilla films, like there really isn't a lot of clear examples of sexism, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. But there are like little tidbits in dialogue where I feel like one could make the analysis that it could have some connection to it. Obviously, the writers could prove us wrong by providing explanation too. So it really depends on the situation. But you know me, being the little activist self that I am, I'm always trying to look for like, is this good representation or could it be better representation? So,
Mhm.
but for Akane, like I really feel like when it comes to thinking of representation, like I think she does serve as a really empowering example of representation done very well in a science fiction film.
Oh, for
You know,
sure. I want
100.
to add that the actress, Yumiko Shaku, or however you say Japanese names, um, she uh, she was a reviewer or graveur, however you say it. She was a model. She's a swimsuit model. Did kind of like steamy setups.
Mhm.
And there's a stereotype that women can't be beautiful and intelligent at the same time, or good at anything else, and the actress, does a phenomenal job of portraying this emotionally disturbed and, quiet, non-flashy character. So in real life, this actress is all about, physical, visual presentation, showing off, one might say, right? Showing off the goods. And then in this movie, she's very modestly dressed, she's covered up, and she's not loud or flashy or tries to draw attention to herself. She plays the opposite of what one might think that actress would act like. So I have tremendous respect for her being able to tap into this. And she might very well be like that in real life. Who knows? But
Right.
there's this association that if you do modeling or show off or anything, that you must be a narcissistic turd. And I think she just does so well portraying a character that's very non-flashy, very low-key, and just gets the job done. So for a little clap for Shaku. Love
I
her.
love it.
Yeah.
So, like, looking in the comments, Rogue Agent Killer Rodan mentions Godzilla versus Megaguirus and like the difference between the Japanese version and the dubbing. And see, and unfortunately, this happens quite a bit. Like when we look at like Americanized versions of films, because they will incorporate dialogue that may not be accurate or dialogue that might make it a little bit more believable to American audiences, whether it be, how concerning that is or not, but like I do think it would be really interesting to talk a little bit about uh Kiriko Tsujimori in
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla versus Megaguirus, because that film was also pretty interesting, and I really feel like that Akane Ishiro was very much kind of modeled off from Godzilla versus Megaguirus's character,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of like very close parallels. There is a tragedy at the beginning. There, like, of course, there's a loss, and the main character ends up
Yeah.
going through like this dynamic shift. Um, I personally like. I mean, I'm trying to remember the actress's name who plays Sujimori. I think her name is. Is it Masato Tanaka? I can't remember off the top of my head. I
I
do
don't
know that
know.
she was in Godzilla Tokyo SOS though as well. She played a
Mm-hmm.
nurse, But
Yeah.
like I think she did a very good job with that role. But of course, like I don't think that film has so many characters in it that I think it kind of loses its cohesion when it comes to developing the individual characters. Whereas I think Godzilla against Mechagodzilla really makes up for that.
Yeah, it feels like a redemption from Megaguirus. Like, hey, we tried this female character, and I don't have a problem with Tujimori, or I don't think she's bad per se, but Akane definitely does way better handling the concepts of loss and tragedy, and it's just a more emotional, intimate movie. Megaguirus kind of has this cheesy, goofy feel to it, um, and it doesn't really center entirely on her, but Mechagodzilla, that movie is Akane's movie, kind of. She is there, present at basically all times, doing her thing, and it feels like a makeup, for the loss of a character in Megaguirus, I guess. Like, hey, let's try this again and do better.
Right,
So,
right. And like it's like I do agree with what Maddie just said, that against Mechagodzilla was pretty much everything from Megaguirus but perfected. And Alyssa, I think you made a great point. Like Megaguirus was very campy. Like,
mm,
let's be honest, a
yeah.
giant black hole gun shot from space. Like,
It's the
like
music and the other characters, like that goofy guy, what's his name? Crap.
Oh, Kudo? Is that his name?
Kudo or something like that. Yeah, him. He's just so goofy. Like I like him, but he's just like
Goofy and attractive. Like I was like, I remember when I first watched that film, I was just like, okay, like
yeah.
okay.
Honestly, he's. I'll give it to you, but it's just like there's this whole culture around it that's just, and when they fire the black hole gun, they have this grand music playing, and it's just different.
Michiru Oshima is an iconic musical composer, and I'm so glad that they brought her back after Godzilla versus Megaguirus
Yeah,
because, like, I couldn't think of anybody else better. I mean, of course, aside from Akira Ifukube, to compose those films. So,
so
um,
good.
Ellen's like hashtag bring back Megaguirus. I
Yeah,
agree.
I love her. I love Megan Gears.
Me too. I think we do need more Megaguirus.
Oh man.
Yeah, Rogue Agent said that like the Millennium films kind of did a lot of recycling, and it is true.
Yeah.
It is true. So to answer my own question that I just posed, the empowering woman who empowered me the most in the Godzilla franchise was none other than the
Oh,
timeless and iconic Miki Sagusa
of
from
course.
the Heisei Godzilla films, portrayed by the wonderful Megumi Odaka. And okay, so I watched those films, the Heisei Godzilla films, when I was like a preteen, because they finally were released in the United States at that point.
Man.
It took it a million years,
Huh.
and Mickey, like I feel like there were certain films in the Heisei movies that like really showcased her very, very well. But then there were other films that kind of didn't showcase her as well as I think they could. But essentially, she is in Godzilla vs. Biollante, King Ghidorah, Mothra, Mechagodzilla 2, Space Godzilla, and Destroya. So she is one of the most frequently occurring characters in a storyline that is episodically connected
Mhm.
across the span of 6 movies or so. So like she is introduced as this psychic girl who develops a stronger connection with Godzilla, who ends up kind of being used as a weapon against him sometimes, but ultimately ends up kind of solidifying that psychic connection with him and understanding him, on a deeper level, right? Kind of
Mhm.
understanding him far more than the other human characters could, because
Mhm.
they just kind of viewed Godzilla as being like this lumbering titan who, um, you know, I don't know, like this lumbering titan who just destroyed everything, right? So like I think that she really went through her own set of dynamic changes too. Um, so Ellen mentions, I don't really like the term empowering woman. Oh, Ellen, I can always rely on you on being the voice of dissent, but that's what things interesting, right? I'm of the opinion that you're the only one who can empower yourself. Plenty women can be inspiring. However, I would agree partially in the sense that I do think that everyone should be able to empower themselves to a certain extent. But I also think that people need positive examples in media so they can model their own self-empowerment, if that makes sense, right? Because if
Something
they
to
don't,
compare to.
yeah, like if they don't have that point of comparison, it's really hard to kind of create that unless you have some really good educational, influential figures in your life, right? So like I think empowering women can be applicable sometimes. Like for me, like I found Miki Sagusa a very empowering woman because as a young person, like I was always kind of like that different person. Like I was always that guy who was in touch with, his emotions, would often get bullied or criticized for that. And kind of Mickey's almost rebelliousness when it came to her support of Godzilla because of her emotional connection, that kind of empowered me slash inspired me. Like I think both of those can be used interchangeably to really gain strength from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. For
So
sure. I like that you mentioned her emotional rebellion. It's like, hey, I have emotions and that's fine. Look, I'm using them for a beneficial purpose. So, you know?
right. And now that the thing is, like, I do not believe that, at least that I can recall, I don't think that Miki Sagusa was treated like with any sexism from the male characters. But like I do know that there were a lot of characters who would often kind of scoff at her abilities and be like, oh my god, like there goes Mickey again, with pining over Godzilla emotionally
Why
or
don't you
whatever.
think about something else for a change? Like, what did he say? Something about,
Right.
like, men falling in love.
Oh my god, what did in Godzilla versus Space Godzilla,
Yeah,
there
what
was
did
that
he say? I forgot. It's something
scene
like,
on the beach where,
yeah.
what does he say?
He's like, what? Don't you ever think about something else, like falling in love or something? I don't know.
You ever think about like men or falling in love? And
Yeah.
I'm
It's
just
like,
like, Koji Shinjo, if you're attempting to woo Mickey, like this is kind of an
you're doing a bad
awkward,
job.
like, I get that this whole sunset and ocean is very romantic, but I feel like you're not saying the right things in
Words
order.
mean things. Well, that'd
Right.
be like someone looking at me and saying, why don't you think about something other than writing your books? Like, ugh.
Right.
It's
Like, things
um,
that we're super invested in. Okay, let me switch my lighting here because my lighting is driving me nuts.
yeah, I don't. That was funny. That whole sunset scene is just a barrel of laughs. It's
It's Oh gosh, it's very cringeworthy, but I do love that they make Mickey's character kind of like stand her ground and be like, don't you care about anything else? Like what the heck?
no, of course not. Of course not.
So let's see. I need to catch up on the comments because people have been commenting. So Rogue Agent says, here's a fun fact. Just so you know, the original producer wanted to use Mickey more in future films after Destroy, but sadly he died. So basically he took these plot concepts. Wow, I did not know that. That's interesting. And Maddie says, it's so nice that Megumi Odaka has been a bit more active now again with her second G-Fest appearance, in which we got to meet her, which I'm still like
Jealous.
sobbing over. You will eventually. I know you
One
will.
day.
And she's also like maintaining a Facebook group, or her husband is helping her with that. She also has a Twitter presence, which is totally cool. Like, I love it. Like, I really think, like Leo says, like, I low-key hope that Legendary, or at least Toho in the future, hires Megumi Odaka to reprise her role in some
She
way.
needs to do something. Like
Like,
put
it
her
would,
in. I think she's ready now at this point to start getting back into that kind of a thing.
right, like
You know?
like I think she's realized like how invested fans are in her success and in the roles that she's been in.
Yeah.
And I can tell, like, even at G-Fest, like that G-Fest that she went to had one of the largest turnouts
I
for
bet.
any G-Fest, and part of that was because she was there. And I could tell when she was speaking that she was just kind of elated by the amount of support.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay. D Duval 59 mentions Michiru Oshima is empowering, in my humble opinion. She composed the second best Godzilla theme song and is really just an accomplished musician overall. Yes,
Absolutely.
I agree completely.
You know what really blew my mind?
What?
So I realized how tiny the world is and how basically everything I love is Japanese. So I was doing a project on Zelda music for school, and I discovered that Oshima had composed some of the trailer music for the game. One of my favorite games ever, Zelda Twilight Princess, and I I can't explain the astoundment that I felt. Like, what? She
See,
composed for that game, like my two favorite things, Godzilla and like Zelda, like what?
I never knew that.
I didn't either. And I asked her, I said, what did you do for that game? Like, I'm so thrilled that, you did like two of my favorite things pretty much, like you were involved with it. And she said, oh, I did trailer 2 or something. And I just like, hold the phone. You what? And I could hear it. This is the coolest thing. as I was listening back to that track, I heard the influence. I could hear her style, and I was like, whoa, the world is so small. Everything I love is Japanese. End of story. She's one of my favorite musicians ever because of that.
Well, that's what makes it so cool. Like when you see, when you hear the music from artists like that, like gradually, once you get more exposed to their work, like you can tell there's a style. Like
Oh yeah. Gosh, I
there's
love
so
her.
many stylistic choices. Like I know like Michiru Oshima's arrangement of the Mothra song from Godzilla Tokyo SOS is one of my favorites. It
Mm-hmm.
is stunning.
Oh yeah.
And I like, oh yeah, like Cthulhu the One agrees as well. So like it's just hauntingly beautiful, and I think that she was able to look at these characters and capture the essence of each of them through the music, you
A
know.
true artist.
Yeah.
Love her.
Hashtag artist goals.
Yeah, really.
So now do you have any other um women in the Godzilla films who you found really empowering that you can think of off the top of your mind?
I really liked Katsura because her there's something about how they wrote that movie that I really wanted to capture in my book in a way, like kind of just like this innocent girl who's drawn into a horrible situation and is forced to play the part of the antagonist. Honestly, actually, that's really close to my book. Um, and then she has promise it wasn't intentional. But then she like at the end she has like this awakening. Except for her, it ends tragically. But like I just, as a child, I loved that movie because of her. Tomoko Ai, that's her name.
Yes, I think
Um,
so.
yeah, I trying to say her last name. Ah, so bad at this. But she just she's great. Like she really pulls out that role of the innocent girl who can turn evil in the wrong hands and become like just used as a tool or a weapon. And how she has this awakening at the end and she performs that self-sacrifice to save the world. And they're like the tentative relationship she was trying to form with Ichinosi, but it didn't really work out well because she's got that inner conflict and stuff. Just it was well done. Honestly, I really liked her presentation and what she does at the end. Like she was one of the first examples of a really in there and active female character in Godzilla. So
Yeah, like I'm glad that you mentioned her specifically because Terror of Mechagodzilla was like, I mean, if we look at the 70s Godzilla films, aside from maybe Godzilla versus Hedorah, which I know is one of your favorites, right? Terror of Mechagodzilla kind of recaptures that like darker essence.
that's why I like it.
And me too, me too. And that darker essence very much is encapsulated with Katsura, right? And if memory serves me correctly, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I believe that the American version of that film edited out that self-sacrifice that she performs at the end,
Yep.
whereas in the original Japanese version, like her heroism is in that act of self-sacrifice. Like her humanity stayed intact because she was able to make that choice. So
Yeah, I remember watching the Japanese ending for the first time. I was like, "What the heck? What did you do? You butchered it, Americans! Like, you did
right.
out."
And you know what's funny? Like I watched that for the first time probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And
Hmm.
I had no idea that that was the actual ending. And I was just
Whoa, this movie just got even better.
I was like having like a moment of existential crisis. I was like, oh my gosh, like um okay, so I need to catch up on comments really quickly. I'm sorry that I'm so horrible with that today, everyone. So let's see. Do. Oh, whoops, I just clicked on the wrong thing. My bad. DD Duval asks, did we disqualify Biolante and Mothra? No, we have not, and I fully plan to talk about both of those
Awesome.
wonderful characters later in this episode. The one from Ibera Horror of the Deep, um,
Oh,
Dio, who is
Dio.
played by
It's played
Kumi
by
Mizuno, right?
mhm.
Um, Also a phenomenal character. I love that film. A very underrated Showa Godzilla film, in my opinion.
Honestly, that's one of my favorites. Like when I would think of the movies when I was a kid and I couldn't afford these movies and I would go to Hastings to rent them, it was always Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla, and Hedorah.
Oh my God, I love Hastings. I completely forgot about Hastings.
You know what it is?
Yes, I do.
Oh my gosh. No one knows. Like they're like, what is that?
When
And
when I was doing my master's in Missouri, there was a Hastings store in town, and it was one of the biggest ones in Missouri. So I would go there like all the time to get
oh,
Godzilla
so
stuff.
nice. They'd have books and like merchandise. It's like Barnes and Noble pretty much, but like movies. And then, like Barnes and Noble, they'd have the merchandise part. And as a kid, it was just one of my favorite places. But apparently it was a very like Pacific Northwestern, maybe Midwestern thing because nobody knows what that store is. They're all like Blockbuster, and I'm like Hastings.
And now Blockbuster's a thing of the past too. I'm gonna check my face
everything
really quick. Hold that thought. There we go. Now you can actually see my face. Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I really found that character to be pretty dynamic. Dio specifically, and all the other ones we've been talking about. Ellen mentions Baragon 2001 suit actor, woman, which is definitely worth noting, right? That's very significant. And Maddie says that Tomoko Ai was another one that
oh my gosh.
She was at G-Fest?
She was at G-Fest. I've seen pictures of her when I would look her up for videos. I saw her at G-Fest, and I was like, man, why?
Oh my gosh, I am so angry that I missed that G-Fest.
It's freaking amazing. I love her.
Oh my goodness. Weren't all of the villains from Destroy All Monsters women as well? Yeah, I think. It's been a long time since I've watched Destroy All Monsters. Like I feel like we could have a whole episode unpacking the significance of that, right? What were they called? The key locks?
They had the sunglasses.
I
want some glasses like that.
They had a really bad fashion. Wait, were those the Exilians or the key
locks? Wait, I think okay, now I'm confused. Is it Astro Monster that's a key locks or
Astro Monster are the people from Planet X, right? So I think
then it's Exilians. They're the Exilians.
Yeah, because they were also in Godzilla Final Wars too.
Yeah, I remember. I was like, they brought it back because then they had the sunglasses again. Yeah, that's what it is.
Which was iconic. Like as much as Godzilla Final Wars is a hot mess express, that film was super entertaining.
I really like that movie, honestly.
Like if I want just mindless fun, I will turn on Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah.
But let's see. Miss Namakawa from I just lost that.
She was from Astro Monster.
Yes.
That's Exilian. So the Keylocks had the full body, like the shiny stuff, like Ellen said, the tinfoil. So I got that in my mind now. And the
the Keylocks had like off-brand Lady Gaga outfits.
Yeah. And then the Exilians, like it was in Final Wars, had the glasses, and then they had the black and gray suits. And then
they were like all in leather. Like it was very interesting,
Yeah.
Amiko Yamane doesn't really do a lot in the original Godzilla film. TD Duval. I think Amiko Yamane. Okay, it's interesting that you mention her specifically because I originally thought that until I went back and watched the original Godzilla film, she's the one who kind of reminds Dr. Serizawa of his humanity.
So she plays an indirect but still important part.
Like I think, I would argue that her part is larger than we realize, although like watching the film for the first time, it's easy to kind of not notice that. And keep in mind, I've watched it a million times and have not noticed that until recently. So, oh my gosh, Ellen, you have opened this up. What have you done? The Elias are amazing characters.
I was wondering.
And
we're gonna cover them.
I have a
oh my gosh, I love them.
They are my queens.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so everybody knows that I am the annoying person who will always talk about the Mothra Trilogy, because I
Oh,
think the Mothra Trilogy is the best thing since sliced bread.
good.
Am I a little bad? Am I a little? I almost read Ari's comment, bad romance. Am I a little biased? Probably. But I thought that the Mothra trilogy did something very unique with Mothra's fairies in the
Oh
sense
yeah.
that they were all given separate personalities, right?
Mhm.
Which allowed for a lot of really interesting character development, which was a breath of fresh air compared to the very annoying kids that are in all three of those films. Right? We all know that we can admit that. Now, like,
Yeah.
of course, we really see those characters develop. Like Mull, is like the kind of like leader sister. She's very much representative of wisdom. Like she's very focused on doing the right thing, self-sacrifice. Laura represents love, and she's like the very emotive sister. And then Belvira is the darker, angsty, grungy, quote unquote evil sister, though not really evil when you think about it, but she's representative of courage. Now, I
Yo,
love that.
yo,
Oh,
wait.
go ahead.
That's Zelda. And I was gonna tell you the Triforce, right?
Yeah.
Wisdom, courage, and love. But I was gonna tell you one.
Alyssa.
So one, we have that, what the sisters represent. Two, in the third movie, they have the little swords. Remember
And
the
that
three
and those
swords?
pendants
Yeah.
that
And
are
it
like
looks
the tri oh my god.
yeah, and then three, I was thinking about this and I didn't even think of that yet. I was thinking purely about how the movies remind me of Zelda with how they're like kid friendly but also really dark at the same time. And it's like adventure with kids and like the sweet elements of the movies, and then it's also like world endingly dark at the same time. I was like, that's very Zelda. And then
Oh,
you said that. I'm like, the Triforce. Oh my gosh.
I I never made that connection, and I am like mind blown right now. See, this is why we love doing streams together, because we learn about this stuff because
Absolutely.
we're unpacking these things. Yeah, it was called the Elias Triangle. Um,
The freaking
oh
Triforce.
my goodness, I am nerding out right now.
The metaphorical characters and what they represent, and then they have the triangle, like. And I
Yes,
think Zelda was really popular around that time too. Like the
it was.
first movie came out in '96, so I'm sure
Yeah.
they were like, "Ooh, Zelda," and it's
Well, and
Japanese.
like I really do like, because I know a lot of Godzilla fans are very quick to criticize the Mothra trilogy, but we have to be honest in admitting the fact that the Mothra trilogy is a very fresh take on Mothra in
Oh yeah,
general.
so
You
good.
know, like a very fresh take on Mothra herself as a character, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, but also very refreshing when it comes to Mothra's fairies. Like, don't get me wrong, like the Shobijin and the Cosmos from the Showa and Heisei era, like they were very interesting and very like involved, and I would argue empowering in their own way, right?
Yeah,
But like we see the Elias in a much more self-motivated light,
intimate.
which like Leo mentions, Belvira's character development in the third movie is wonderful. She went from a two-dimensional evil fairy to a multifaceted anti-hero. Leo, if that were a paper that I were grading and that was like the thesis statement, it would probably get an A. Just
Oh
saying.
my gosh, that's amazing.
Um, yeah, that like when we're able to see that dynamic character development take place, like that's um very important, you know.
It's just, it's a very close up, intimate look into their characters. Like you're following them through the movie. You're not following a batch of human characters that happen to interact with Mothra's fairies. You're following her and the fairies and some annoying kids that
Exactly.
talk about how they want to eat at McDonald's every day. But I really, I want to capture that scene, right? Where they're in the boat, and then the one kid says, "If I had $1 million, I would eat at McDonald's every day." And then like Shiori, is that what her name?
Oh yeah,
Shiori?
Shiori.
Shiori, she says, don't you boys think about anything other than video games and food or something? And she just nails them. And I just want to put like the sunglasses thing on her, the gangsta look, and just make that a meme.
You know,
I love that scene.
I'm glad that you mentioned Mothra too, because that movie, of course, gets a pretty bad rap for being super campy.
I love it.
The dialogue is hilarious.
It is. It's
Like,
good.
truthfully, it kind of reminds me of a Power Rangers film. like the two, like Belvira was really dramatic, like Rita Repulsa, and then the two like hoity-toity male like villains were just ridiculous. But like that one line that you mentioned where he was like, if I had $1 million, I would eat McDonald's every day. Like, I remember being like, same. Like, I am having a relatable character moment right now.
She just nails him.
And oh my gosh, Ellen says, how to pass Donny's class. Literally say anything good about the Elias or Mothra. Yes, A+ all the way.
Oh my God.
Maddie, yes, Toshiyuki Watanabe scores.
My gosh, this stuff is so good. I was listening. I had a Mothra day yesterday. Now, every day is Mothra day. But, you know, like a day where I made an entire playlist for Mothra music. And I was specifically listening to Watanabe's scores. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then I'm imagining like landscapes from my book. Like if it was a movie, like playing over some of the music. And then like some of the battle scenes, like really imagining it. It was like, oh my gosh, you're my goals. You know,
like,
good.
My goal in life is to not only expose more people to the wonder that Mothra is, but to also gush ceaselessly about Toshiyuki Watanabe scores, because they are beautiful. I grew up, I survived high school listening to those musical scores.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And love them. And by the way, they are on Amazon Music, if nobody knew that. I don't know if they're on Spotify or not.
They are. There's the entire soundtracks. All of them are on there.
Spotify? Oh my goodness.
All 3 movies. I hunted them down. Just put in Rebirth of Mothra and you'll come up with him as the artist and all of his stuff. There's like compilations are like 7 to 15 minutes long of each movie.
Cheers to that.
Yeah. It's great. And I think about, of course, I'm in book mode. Mm-hmm. So I've been putting together a video where I talk about the 10 most influential TV shows and movies on my book. So I've got Dexter in there, I've got Cujo, I've got a bunch of like random stuff, but I explain why it's so applicable to my book. And honestly, the magic and the morals of the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy and just those empowering female characters really inspired the stuff in my book. Can't deny it. It's just like Twilight is channeling that Elias energy. So,
oh my God. I never put that together, but now looking back on it, it makes complete sense.
You see it now?
That just made me feel this incredible well of wholesomeness.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Didi Duval mentions the video that Biragon did on YouTube was so sweet and amazing. I completely agree. There was another comment above. I nominate Biragon's Little Godzilla for empowering female related to Godzilla. Yes. If you've not watched that video, go visit Biragon's channel. It's very moving, and I think that we need more of that in the Godzilla fandom, 100%. Let's see. I'm trying to catch up on comments. I apologize, my friends.
Oh, yeah.
Ari's like, Ari's like, I feel like you can play drinking games with the Mothra trilogy. You can.
Pick a topic and go. Annoying kids every time they say something annoying.
Right, Ari.
You want unpopular opinion? I actually enjoyed the kids in the movies because I felt like they were so dramatic and over the top, and had like I really liked the sibling rivalry and like development of the relationship between the kids in the first movie. The kids in the second movie were hilarious and like they were such 90s movie kids. And honestly, like that just makes
Yep.
me feel warm and fuzzy. And the kids in the third movie, but
Well,
I kind of like them because they're just fun and
well,
annoying.
like, it's interesting because I think the kids in the third movie kind of took a secondary role to the Elias because I think the writers realized it's the Elias that are really driving this move, like these films. So like let's
Yeah.
focus on them. So I think they probably made a great selection.
Yeah.
Yes, Haura Mothra is one of the best Mothra songs ever.
It's good. There's 2 versions too, so like you can just enjoy them both.
I love them both. Like I even know the choreographies and everything
Yeah.
because I was that teenager.
That like specifically those scenes inspired like in my mind, in my book, where like when she'd summon magic and she'd like this, that's from the choreography. And she's got the magic in her hands and she's like about to smite everybody. That's from the movie. Like, because I remember watching those videos, she's going like this, she's bringing her magic together. Boom. It's
I
so
love, oh my gosh, wow.
Do you see it all now?
I do see that. Oh my gosh, so I do have a confession to make. Maddie might be the only one who remembers this because Maddie and I have known each other for what, 15 years now. I used to record mix and do horrible music videos for the Mothra songs.
Me too. Oh my gosh. Go back on my channel to my first videos. They are pictures that are not particularly super in time with the music, just from the movies, but over the songs. I even had a few lyric videos that were poorly done.
I like, Alyssa, I would dramatically do I would Vogue the Mothra songs. It's really bad. I ended up removing them from YouTube because of course they were tagged for copyright stuff a long time ago, but they are out there somewhere. And Maddie probably is the only one who remembers watching those because they were a very select treat, let's just say.
Dude, like you're reacting to your older videos thing. Not to get off topic, but that was one of the best things I've ever seen. It was your reactions, like how you're just laughing. Oh my gosh. And so you inspired me to go back and watch some of the over-the-top cringy skit videos that I would do. I had a character. Her name was Amelia, and I would purposely put on dark blue eyeshadow really badly, as bad as I could possibly do it, just smeared all over my face, and then smear red lipstick on myself, and then I made videos. It's worse. It gets worse. So she would talk in a really high-pitched voice, and she would just make witty remarks about society and boyfriends and stuff, and she's like, I'm gonna go kill my boyfriend with the perfect weapon, a wine opener. They're so bad, but I was like,
that is amazing.
I had a flute, right? I just found it at my grandma's house. My poor grandma. I used her iPhone 5 to record all this. I found this flute with flowers on it, and I titled the video "Amelia is talented!" Exclamation point, right? And the video is her playing as badly as possible, just blowing into the flute as loud as I can, and talking about how talented I am and how everyone's jealous.
Alyssa, I cannot emphasize enough. I need you to do video reactions to this because the universe needs it. I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, I had them on my channel, but I privated them years ago because they actually got likes and views, and I'm like, no more. As soon as I started uploading to YouTube, I'm like,
it's so fun looking back at older videos like that. I know Ari and I, Strange Nothings, have a few really funny old videos that we used to do together. We used to do insulting competitions where we would insult each other and come up with.
That's great.
They were very socially unacceptable, but it was.
Oh, mine too. My stuff. I had a video where I was joking about diets and I took a piece of lettuce out of the fridge and said, "This is all I'm gonna eat today," and then I ate it, and then yeah, it was really bad. But, but I took like a bite, and then I spat it out of my mouth and said, "See, eating, it's easy as that." And then I went downstairs in my grandma's basement. I'm on a roll now, sorry.
I love it.
But I went downstairs, I set down the phone, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go throw up now."
Oh no.
It's so bad. This is why I don't want anyone to see it, because it's like so insensitive and terrible. But
right. Oh, I have, yeah,
14,
like,
so
some of my old videos, I just was super profane in them, like
yeah.
unnecessary. Like you know me, I do enjoy swearing, right? It is part of my essence as a human being. But I would watch, like, I would watch some of those old videos and be like, Donny, what are you doing? Like, Donny,
oh my gosh,
Donny, calm down.
It's okay. It's not that serious.
Right.
But oh man, I might have to do a reaction to the flute, because that one's not too bad.
Oh my gosh, do it. Please
do. It's still terrible though. The one where I kill my boyfriend named Johnny Boy, and then my grandma, I hear her asking at the end of the video as I cut it off, "What are you doing?"
So I feel like we like, because I know when we both get on a roll, we get off topic. I know.
Yeah.
So I realize that I do have other questions to ask, and we're already an hour in. My bad. So okay. Now, when it comes to looking, sorry. I'm having one of those moments where I like can't look at you because I will just be reminded to laugh at what we were just talking about. So what makes an empowering female character in the Godzilla franchise? Like, if you were to kind of summarize like the common qualities that we see in the different women that we've noted, what are those common qualities?
I would say for people like Miki Sagusa, it's the ability to use your emotions and not be embarrassed by them or afraid of what other people think of them, and use them for common good. You know, haters can back off. That's a TV show too. Right. And also just self-sacrifice. That's just a human trait, right? But I think it's cool to see women do it, because it's, the idea is that men lay down their lives for women, but it's cool to see women do it when the time calls for it. And also just the ability to rise to the occasion, men and women both can answer higher calls for their lives, and they can embrace purpose and individuality, and they can do things. We're all set out for some kind of adventure. Life is worth something, and I like how Against Mechagodzilla tackles that theme. But self-sacrifice, the ability to utilize your emotions, and that it's okay to not have emotions and to be particularly flashy or feminine in Akane's case, and just being able to get the job done, be decent, and use what you got to help others. What would you say?
Like, I completely agree with that 100%. Like, clearly, when it comes to characters like Miki Sagusa and Akane, like, they were characters, if you examine the films closely, they were characters who were specifically kind of othered, if that makes sense.
Right, for different reasons too.
Right. And each of those characters kind of overcome this otherness. The same could be said like about Belvira from the Mothra trilogy, like, because obviously Mole and Laura had a very close connection. Belvira was kind of in a way dismissed as being like this evil character, and justifiably so, because Belvira did some horrible things, but we see her herself overcome that otherness, right, in order to kind of save the day or help save the day. And I think that is definitely one of the common traits of these empowering characters who happen to be women, right? And I've also come to understand that they kind of overcome being misunderstood in some way, right? Mickey was kind of viewed as being like this Godzilla sympathizer. you know, this character who sympathizes with Godzilla no matter what he does, but eventually the human characters all just realize that Godzilla is a breathing creature, right? Who
Sentient.
has his, yeah, he's sentient. Um, and Belvira was misunderstood, I would
Hmm.
argue. Akane was definitely misunderstood. She even misunderstood herself,
Yeah.
right? I think even Katsura went through like this degree of being misunderstood, um, because she was kind of battling like this inner back and forth of like humanity versus machinery, right?
Yeah. Also something I use in my book, except not machinery, just monstrosity. My gosh, I didn't realize. Anyway, sorry.
Uh, but see, the thing is, like, it just this inspiration just goes all around. I love it.
Yeah, and I was trying to think, like what Godzilla movies inspired this because people ask me, is Godzilla involved in any way? No, there's monsters, but I was like, what? I was trying to think, Godzilla didn't really play a part in the book very much, in terms of inspiration. And then I started thinking back on the female characters and how they impacted Twilight. And I'm like, whoa. And
Mm-hmm.
then definitely Rebirth of Mothra for sure. But yeah, I like what you said about their otherness because they all seem to tackle it in different ways. They're all different people with different personalities, but you see them all overcome their otherness to varying degrees and in different ways, which is really cool. You have the emotional, sentimental Miki who embraces that and just takes on her otherness. And then there's Akane who's pretty much the opposite. She doesn't really show much and she doesn't fully change, but she changes pretty well. She has that arc and it's in a different way than Miki, and they all just develop in their own ways. They're all different, and yet they have that common core. So,
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a good point that you made there. Um, like looking at that common core, and like it's just interesting to see why these characters are othered. You know,
yeah,
sometimes they are othering themselves because they have a past that kind of leads to that. Oh my gosh, I Kiriko Tsujimori from Godzilla vs. Mechagoras is a great example of that as well. Um, where like it's a situation where other people are othering them, you know, a group
hmm
of people, right?
yeah,
So it's just I don't know. It's really empowering to see like those consistencies. Oh my gosh, another one that I don't think we've mentioned. Yuri Tachibana from Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah All Out Monsters Attack. Did we have we mentioned her yet? I don't think we
no,
have.
mm-mm. Miss Reporter who wants to report.
And she does point out sexism in the
Yeah,
workplace in
yeah,
that
she
film,
does.
which I do think is interesting. And I think she does so like in a joking, sarcastic way, but like, you know,
Still, you still like the writers knew what they were saying.
but it's
Sarcasm
still
is a way to speak the truth.
yeah, it still works. But yeah, like I thought that Yuri was very interesting because she kind of like we see a character placed in a journalism role, which is unique, something that we haven't really seen since the Showa era, mind you. And because most of the films focus on either children, military characters, or uh, people of those sorts,
Yeah,
right? And I think the reason why they do have that focus is because those are the groups of people who, you know, directly react to Godzilla or directly have, you know, involvement with the kaiju characters, right? So
yeah,
like we see like a journalist in that film take on like the primary role, and it's interesting seeing what she chooses to do versus what the other characters choose to do, um, which I thought was like super interesting, you know, from the get
yeah.
go.
Her dynamic with her father too. She's out there recording Godzilla on her bike, and he's like, "Stupid girl," and she kind of seems, she comes across like she's this dumb, naive, like 20 something, I assume, girl who's just out there trying to get famous or whatever. And yet she makes some mistakes, but she's pretty competent. She rebounds. And I love that moment toward the end where she's holding his hand, that guy's hand, and, they're dangling over the bridge. It's like, ooh,
That
she's
like
evolved.
the whole sequence where like that whole portion of the film where she is like running through the bridge, like reporting because she knows that she needs to tell the story.
Yeah.
Especially like of the brave like people who are in the military who are doing what they can, the guardian monsters as well. That dynamic between her and her father, like I thought was very interesting character development that we don't
Yeah.
really see often in Godzilla films, because he's painted as being like this very rigid, militaristic person.
Yeah.
And they kind of have like a role reversal as the film goes along, and they kind of develop a stronger appreciation for one another
Mm-hmm.
because they both try to do some sort of self-sacrifice for the greater good, just in different ways.
Right. And then they
So
have that moment at the end and that beautiful music that plays. I love
yeah,
it.
that composer for that film did a wonderful job. I'm fairly sure that it is the same composer of the Gamera trilogy, at least Gamera 3. Somebody who has a better knowledge of names can name drop the composer in the chat if they could. That's the
I think
title.
it's Kawatani.
Kawatani, yes. That's the also Cthulhu the One mentions that determined to protect the future is that track that I was talking about. Well, that the track during that sequence.
Yeah, I love it.
I used to like cry to that song all the time.
It's good.
Leo says, I never fully understood why GMK was made. Like, I don't understand why it was so standalone and one off. I think the truth is that they just wanted a fresh take on Godzilla because the Millennium series,
Fizzling out.
yeah, it was fizzling out, and it was really trying to kind of capture the gravitas of the Heisei era, but I don't think they could really catch on with like how they wanted to go about doing that.
Mm.
If that makes sense. So until they like, I think Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah was a very good effort because it was pretty successful. But then once they got to the Kiryu saga, that's when it started getting that like episodic consistency,
Right.
like the other films used to have.
Then there's Final Wars, and it's just like
All out, like free for all.
jeez.
Yes, thank you, Maddie, for like, yeah, thank you for mentioning the full name. Yep.
Good old Kawatani.
Maddie also mentions that Mothra and Ghidorah would be more profitable, and they weren't wrong, right?
Yeah.
And Ellen mentions that Shin Godzilla had a similar ending too, right? I think there are, like, when we think of Shin Godzilla, I think there are very interesting characters who are women in that as well. There is, oh gosh, I'm going to fail with the names. There's Kyoko, who is that, she's a politician.
Yeah.
And like she's very much like coordinating the response to Godzilla, but she's kind of bringing in like the world perspective outside of Japan.
Yeah.
Who is that girl who is the scientist? Isn't she like a biologist?
I know what you're talking about.
What is her name? Somebody help me. Somebody
I
help
don't know.
us.
But
Maddie is
I have her in my mind.
Maddie, I am calling on you to answer that question.
Yeah, she's the
Hiromi.
one. Who is it?
Hiromi, I think that's her name. Ellen
Okay.
just love her.
Yeah.
Hiromi Ogashira, yes. I just thought that they contrasted so well and they were very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they worked so well with the other characters, I think. Like it showed some really interesting solidarity. Like I'm sure they may not have been wanting to focus on that, but looking at it from like an analytical perspective, I thought that was really fascinating. I
Oh yeah.
have a strong appreciation for Shin Godzilla.
I need to watch it because I feel like now, I think it's actually one of the coolest movies. It's just for me, it's just so slow and just swamped with politics I didn't really understand fully. Maybe that was intentional, to show the sluggishness of the Japanese government. It probably was. But
Right.
that's an example of like where it's just not like it drags on too much.
Yeah, it's very different for a Godzilla film. And like it took me like a few watches and I had to do some research honestly on like Japanese government processes
Yeah.
because like it really like after I did that research, I was like, "Oh wow. That makes sense now like why there's like conference after conference after conference after
Accomplished
conference."
nothing. Sounds like Congress.
Right? It sounds like my meeting schedule, like
Jeez.
meeting after meeting after meeting. So, but yeah, like, yeah, excellent points, my friend. Now, I do have another question that I figured we would probably go to like an hour and a half or like an hour and 15 minutes in.
Okay.
This is the last question that I have that I think might create some interesting conversation. Are there any women in any of the Godzilla films who could have benefited from better writing or development, in your opinion?
Um. Well, we talked about Yamane and how she plays an indirect role. Now, as you know, I'm gonna call myself an author now. I'm gonna say it. Like
You are an
I'm not
author.
published, but I'm gonna call myself one. I got my edits, and now that I like agree with my editor, I feel like I'm able to critically analyze
It
and
is a title you should be proud to own.
absolutely. But through the author's lens, as I'm evaluating characters, you could go either way. You could say that someone like her would require, she could benefit from more development, or you could say that because she had an indirect influence, that almost makes it more meaningful and suits the story better. You could say either one. This is where my indecision and my love to compromise comes in. But it could work either way. I feel like in that movie it works for her. Um, I'm trying to think of others. Like I think Tsujimori, she was good, but she lacked something that Akane had, and I think that's part of like the soul element. I didn't really feel it.
Right.
It sounded like what she was saying about you don't run from it, you fight it. Like it sounded kind of trite and
Now that
it
I
came
think
across
about
wrong.
it, I think Sujimori was more motivated by revenge,
Yeah, and
whereas
Akane's like
Akane,
redemption.
yeah, and she her motivation was kind of like recognizing her place in the world, right?
Yeah,
Um, wow, interesting. I never thought of that shift,
yeah,
that difference. Somebody mentioned Leo mentions the Elias. I do
right.
agree. I think that they should like they did begin the Mothra trilogy by establishing that they have different personalities, but
Hmm.
I think they should have established their like sisterly connection like with the Elias triangle way, 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 way earlier. Like that I mean I think they did okay in Mothra 3 with pulling it off, but it would have been much more interesting to see it far prior to that.
They could have
Um,
mixed and matched some of the plots and the monsters. Like Desghidorah could have been the ending, but then they keep what's in the third movie, like the time travel thing. They could have kept that for that.
right.
Like I don't know. It felt like it was. I feel like the second one should have been the first one because that was the least threatening monster, but still like kind of impressive. He's messing up the ocean. The Garla. He could have been first movie. You started out okay. Here's some stakes, and then you gradually raise the stakes throughout the series because you're not supposed to start off strongest. You're supposed to start off strong, stronger, strongest. I'm
Right.
talking as a trilogy writer. Everything comes back to that. But start off strong, get them hooked, introduce the triangle in the first one, the
Mhm.
Triforce, and then move
It's
your way through.
I
Two
love
Japanese pieces of media, works out.
it. Oh my goodness. I love it. Another character that I think would have benefited from more development. Okay, so as much as I love Miki Sagusa, like if I were writing the Heisei Godzilla films, I would have gone about her a little bit differently. Um, Godzilla versus Biollante, I think, did a pretty good job introducing her. Godzilla versus King Ghidorah and Godzilla versus Mothra did a dismal job developing her. Okay, Godzilla versus Mothra is one of my favorite Godzilla films, the 1992 one, but it makes me irate how Miki Sagusa is simply sidelined to being this Godzilla's coming. Godzilla, I can sense Godzilla. It's like,
Oh,
we know you can. Like,
geez. Yeah.
so
Great. What
like,
else?
yeah, like I'm just like, like if we look at the 3 films after that, like obviously in Mechagodzilla 2, Mickey's connection with Godzilla really starts taking shape.
Yeah.
Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, as people criticize it as much as they do, I think it really introduces a pretty interesting element of like, well, what is Mickey's personal life like? That's a good
Yeah.
question. And then of course in Destroya, like we see like her connection with Godzilla and Junior getting more significant, right? But in that, like, there's just this frustrating kind of nebulous area between Godzilla versus Mothra and Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, where somehow Mickey develops this connection with Mothra that we see in Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, but we don't see this in Godzilla versus Mothra. And I think that
Yeah. It's like, where'd that come from? That threw
yeah,
me.
that could have been something that would have been a beautiful thing to develop.
Yeah.
Um, I believe the manga develops that a little bit. I've seen bits and pieces of the manga from the Heisei Godzilla films, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But um, I do think that it could have been a little bit more consistently handled. And Ellen makes a good point saying that Godzilla versus Mothra 92 focused way more on beam span than anything else. Yes, I do.
Characters, what are those? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good beam spam, but
Yeah. But that can't be all that there is.
right. Oh, Cthulhu, I like that. Mickey kind of adopted Godzilla Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cute.
In a way, she kind of did become like a motherly figure, right?
Little one, where are you?
Not to do a shameless plug for myself,
Go for it. I've done it this entire stream.
but I mean, I love writing Godzilla fan fiction, and my Godzilla fanfic titled Godzilla, A Heart Ruptured continues the Heisei Godzilla films and connects those films with the Mothra trilogy because it angers me that they weren't connected. Um, and I kind of develop Mickey's character in relation to Godzilla Jr. a little bit. So if you ever want to check that out, it's on fanfiction.net, Kaiju Galaxy, and DeviantArt.
I love Donnie's writing. I'm gonna support him here. He's fantastic. Really knows how to use his words and weave them together into really intimate, emotional, and engaging sentences that make for great stories. So please check him out. I've read some of his fan fiction, and 10 out of 10.
That made my day. Thank you. I used to write fan fiction so much, and
Me too. Yeah.
my goal has been to rewrite my entire older fan fiction series with the writing capabilities I have now, with less
Yeah. Tell me
campiness,
about it.
less Mary Sue-ness, less all of that.
Yeah.
But I do like, not to do one other plug, but in my next collection of poems, there's going to be more Godzilla-inspired poetry. So
Awesome.
if anybody's interested in Godzilla-related poetry, my
Yes.
next book, Feats of Alchemy, is going to have more of that. Let me see here. Leo mentions, I can't remember, but did Mickey actually break down when Junior passed? Yes.
She had, yeah.
I still cry when I like Godzilla versus Destroyers and the first Mothra film of the trilogy is very hard for me to watch because of the tragic deaths.
It's so, like, it's so dark.
They
Honestly.
literally
It's so
they
dark.
knew how to initiate my depression when I was a kid. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
We got Godzilla dying, his son dying, Destroya, an entity of death. We've got the little monsters killing the military people. We've got the death of the world on the line. Like, it's just a movie about death.
Right. Exactly.
It really, like, it kind of spiritually upsets me when I watch it because I love that movie, but it is hard to, like, I get like into like a dark mood, I guess, after I watch it because it's just so
It's heavy.
it's heavy,
You
like I
know,
feel
it's
it.
that film makes me feel that heaviness. The first Mothra film of the trilogy gives me that heaviness because of Death
Mhm.
Ghidorah and like all that death and all that.
Yeah,
And then the third Gamera film makes me feel that too. But I think that's what makes them so dynamic, you know.
right.
So, okay, who would win, Mothra Leo as Armor Mothra or Godzilla? I agree with Ellen. Is much okay. So I think Mothra 3 does a very good job of making Mothra OP in every possible way.
Yeah.
Armor Mothra is arguably probably one of the most powerful kaiju out there, excluding maybe some Ultraman ones, Ultraman kaiju.
Oh yeah.
But like I don't like I feel like certain Godzillas would fare well against Armor Mothra. Like I think Shin Godzilla would, and probably Earth Godzilla from the anime trilogy. Wow, I'm blanking right now. Yes. Okay. You know what? Everybody's talking about Mothra's because everybody knows they can get me in a tangent, right? Let's talk about Mothra, Biollante, and Megaguirus as
Let's do it.
Our kaiju ladies. Okay. So, like, obviously, when I was a kid, like, I don't really think viewing them as women really shifted my perspective on anything until I grew older. And grew older to the point where I could appreciate such things. Like, I mean, if we think of Mothra, for example, like aesthetically, personality wise, she is such a contrast compared to the other like serpentine, draconic, cyborg alien characters that are like very bent on destruction, right?
Yeah.
And like a lot of people like equate that or attribute that to her, femininity. And I think that that was very interesting seeing that contrast with destruction. Like there's almost like an angelic attribute to her, which is one reason why I love the legendary Godzilla King of the Monsters, because I think they do a pretty good job like drawing to attention Mothra's power, her majesty, and her the fact that she is a queen. Like that was, I think, super important.
Yeah, she's very nurturing and empathetic. She embodies those very feminine characteristics that are, they're vital to life. We've got all these angry male monsters with their testosterone and they're going in there, beating each other up. And then Mothra's like, okay, we can also kill monsters the soft way. Tap. Or,
right.
when she went savage on Rodan, that was pretty.
But, it's interesting because she didn't choose to kill Rodan. She chose to sting him in a non-fatal spot, too.
Yeah.
So the fact
I thought he died, too, and I was really surprised.
Oh, yeah, me too. And then, like, early on in the film, we see the larva attacking humans, but she doesn't kill them. She just sticks them to her web to get them out of the way. Like those were very interesting characteristics. And the director, Mike Dougherty, flat out said that Toho's stipulation is Mothra cannot kill anybody.
Nice.
And I was like, that's really interesting now that you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Now, looking at Biollante, I love that Biollante, in order, like it's very interesting seeing how, like, in a way, new to the world she is in her rose form. Like she's like very like delicate looking, and she's still capable of battling, but it takes her having to tap into Godzilla's maliciousness in order to actually defeat him in the film, right?
Yeah, she has to channel that and get into it pretty much. Like, and it seems like there's almost a reluctance. Like, well, I have to do this because you're messing with me. So.
Right, exactly.
I feel like she's the balance between Mothra and Megaguirus. The vicious part, defending yourself and your territory, is Megaguirus, but then her innate nurturing self is Mothra. She's like that balance between them.
Right. I think that I agree with that completely. Like Megaguirus was very mischievous. Like
that grin. I love that gif.
Grin, she seemed very petty. Like I love that. Like I'm always about that.
That's
but that, like, it was just like, I don't know, like it's just interesting seeing how each of them contrast. But I do think it's important to recognize the fact that Toho thought that it was significant to establish that these are female characters, right?
Yeah.
Like even these monsters who were, no pun intended, larger than life, literally and figuratively, like
Hmm.
they can also be diverse, and I think that should be celebrated and appreciated in a certain way, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
Let's see, looking at comments here. Maddie says, pretty sure Mothra killed everybody in the battleships in 92. Probably. Mothra can be a baddie sometimes. Biolante for the Monsterverse, I would love that. Like that
They
would,
could do so much with that.
you know,
Honestly.
I do plan on doing a video where I talk about some ideas that the Monsterverse could do. Like hopefully Legendary might listen to that. Who knows? Um but like I just think that I'm gonna be honest. We are living in a really cool time as Godzilla fans
Oh yeah.
because we just like we've had the Monsterverse, we've had Shin Godzilla, we've had the anime trilogy. As much criticism as it gets, it's still Godzilla. We still
And
have
it's still
something.
anime. Yep.
Right. We have Godzilla Singular Point.
A whole anime in itself. Finally.
Right. Which I've not watched yet. I need to, I cannot wait till it comes out here in the United States. And then Toho's been talking about doing their own cinematic universe of Godzilla films. Like, I would argue that we are in another Godzilla golden age, and we
We
should,
are.
like, it's just very exciting. And the fact that I think our fandom is celebrating perspective more so than it used to. Like it's celebrating diversity more and how each of these characters have affected all of us. Like I think that makes this time even more exciting.
Yeah, it's broadening and deepening. It's like we've all become like film critics in a way, but not like critics. Like we've become appreciators of culture and the stuff that's in these movies. Whereas, back in the day they'd say, ah, Godzilla, you know, that that old
That dreadful
dinosaur,
dubbing.
that green old dinosaur, like I
Take
love
that,
him
you
'cause
dinosaur.
he blows up buildings and stuff. Let me eat my cornbread while I watch this movie.
No, I like my favorite line from Godzilla versus King Ghidorah is the like that what is it? That scene in the 1940s
Mm-hmm.
during World War II, where one of the military personnel, after bombarding this dinosaur, who is Godzilla, literally is just like, "Take that, you dinosaur!" Like, why?
Oh.
Why was that necessary? But hey, at least now it kind of gives us a laugh. So.
Yeah.
So as we wind things down here, just looking at a few comments, Ellen is reminded of a dream about Biolante being very scary. I used to have nightmares about Biolante as a kid.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, but now I love Biolante. I love how
Oh, she's really
terrifying she
great.
is. Maddie says, I really hope that the World of Godzilla universe idea comes to fruition. I hope so too. And Ellen also mentions that there's a lot of Ultraman content becoming widely available also.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
if you've not gotten into Ultraman, my friends, Ultraman is a very interesting franchise that has so much content to it that there's probably something that you're going to find that you love.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend checking that out. So this has been such a fun stream, my friend.
It really has.
Granted, we always have a fun time, don't we?
It's true.
And like to everyone who tuned in, like whether you are one of Alyssa GojiGeek101's followers or one of my followers, thank you for listening to our conversation. Subscribe to both of our channels, of course, if you have not
Absolutely.
done so. And of course, we will probably do more collaborations in the future because we, like both of us, very much enjoy having like deeper conversations about these films and characters that we love, because that's how we think they should be celebrated from our perspective.
Like if I don't have these conversations, honestly, I go a little stir crazy in my brain and I kind of go insane. Like, so this really helps. And
Same
especially like,
here.
it's just great. I love talking about this stuff. And streams are a great way to exchange ideas and build on each other's ideas. So thank you for having me, Donny. I love it.
Of course.
I love
Anytime.
it.
May this be, how many streams have we done? I think two
Oh, I don't know.
or four, maybe. May this be the fourth of many that we have.
Yeah, it's
All
great.
right, my friends. Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope that you have a great night tonight, and we will talk to you soon.
May the geek be with you.
Yes.
Always.